Revenge with Karen. The atmosphere in the boardroom on the 42nd floor always carried the same scent, a sterile mix of lemon cleaner, chilled recycled air, and the faint metallic taste of tension. I had spent 15 years learning to inhale that air, learning to read the shifting layers of authority that moved through the corridors of Sterling Heart like current. I was the senior liaison for strategic alliances. It was a title that sounded dull to outsiders. But to anyone who understood how capital flowed through the city, it meant I held the kingdom's access codes. I didn't raise my voice. I never had to. My influence lived in the silence between contracts, in the nod exchanged over a mahogany desk, in the $3 billion consolidation deal. I had spent the last 9 months shaping chaos from raw figures into a flawless piece of corporate harmony. I was standing near the floor-to-ceiling glass reviewing the final clauses on my tablet when the door burst open. It wasn't an entry, it was an intrusion. Cassidy, the freshly appointed VP's daughter, clattered into the room. She was 24 years old, equipped with a newly minted MBA her father probably donated a building for, and wearing a smirk that implied she believed she was the star of some film. Everyone else was just fortunate to be background characters. It was her first day. Truly, her first hour. Excuse me. Her voice sliced through the steady hum of the office like a jagged blade. She wasn't admiring the skyline. She was staring at me, or rather, at my torso. I lowered the tablet slowly, turning toward her with the practiced neutrality I saved for erratic shareholders. Can I help you, Cassidy? I'm Emily. We were supposed to meet at. I know who you are, she cut in, flicking her hand dismissively. She clutched a thick spiral-bound manual. The employee handbook, a fossil from the 90s that nobody had cracked open since the iPhone was invented. And I know what you're doing. Reviewing the merger guidelines for the Sterling deal. I offered, keeping my tone flat. No, she snapped, stepping forward. She reeked of overpowering jasmine perfume and self-doubt. You are violating Code 4. Section B, regarding proper client-facing apparel. I blinked. I was in a vintage Armani blazer, charcoal with pearl buttons, tailored pants, and a leather tote worth more than her vehicle. It was the uniform of a woman who sealed deals. I'm sorry, the pearl buttons, she said, tapping the handbook with a polished nail. The manual clearly requires standardized fasteners only. And that bag? It looks distressed. We don't do distressed here. We embody excellence. The room froze. The analysts in the glass pods outside stopped typing. Junior associates paused mid-sip of their lattes. This is usually where I tell people that if they like witnessing slow-motion disaster or stories where someone gets precisely what they've earned, they should take a moment to tap that follow button and upvote because trust me, the collision is coming. But right then, no one breathed. Cassidy, I said, my voice sinking an octave into lethal calm. I am meeting Marcus Sterling in 48 hours to finalize a $3 billion acquisition. This blazer is not the concern. The concern is that you are disrupting my preparation. Her face flushed a red that clashed with her scarf. She wasn't accustomed to resistance. She was accustomed to Daddy's credit line and frightened assistance. I am the Vice President's Chief of Staff, she declared, wielding a title I knew didn't officially belong to her rank. I am enforcing standards. If you cannot respect the basic rules of this company, how can we rely on you for its future? It was so ridiculous I almost laughed, but then I caught the glint in her gaze. She didn't care about buttons. She wanted a trophy. She wanted to prove in hour one that she was the apex predator. She chose me because I looked entrenched, and toppling the matriarch is the fastest way to terrify the herd. Go home, change. Write a formal apology to HR for the violation, she ordered, arms folding like a barricade. I saw the shake in her fingers, the frantic hunger for approval. I also saw the utter ignorance of what my role actually required. No, I said plainly. Excuse me? No, I have work to finish. I turned toward the window. You're fired, she shrieked. The words hung there, heavy, absurd. I glanced back. She was slightly out of breath, eyes blown wide. She had committed. She'd pulled the lever. You can't be serious, I said, not begging, assessing. I am your superior by proxy, and you're being insubordinate, she screamed, her voice fracturing. Pack up. Security will remove you. Now. I glanced at the panicked analysts beyond the glass. I looked at the $3 billion contract glowing on my tablet, and then a strange, icy clarity washed over me. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt free. Okay, I said. Cassidy blinked, bracing for resistance, expecting pleading. Okay. You're right, Cassidy, I said, snapping my tablet. Closed. Standards matter. I'll gather my things right away. I didn't wait for her reply. I walked past her, my shoulder brushing hers, heading toward my office. She thought she'd asserted dominance. She didn't realize she'd just armed a grenade that wouldn't detonate for 2 days. She had just terminated the only person in the hemisphere who could decode the Sterling family's unspoken agreements. As I moved down the hallway, I didn't turn back, but I felt her stare, baffled by my cooperation, unsure why. The victory tasted hollow. My office was a sanctuary of curated disorder. Unlike the sterile neatness of the boardroom, my desk was a terrain of stacked dossiers, legal pads full of shorthand only I could read. A Rolodex that was, ironically, the most valuable item in the entire building. Cassidy probably assumed everything lived on the cloud. She didn't realize that in high-stakes mergers, the real deals lived on private numbers scrawled on cocktail napkins and business cards tucked into leather binders. I didn't hurry. Hurrying signals guilt or, at the very least, panic. I felt neither. I opened my drawers with the slow certainty of a bomb technician. First, the personal pieces. The framed photo of my father, who taught me integrity, is costly, but desperation costs more. The crystal paperweight Marcus Sterling had gifted me after we closed the Tokyo deal 5 years back. And the Rolodex. I placed it into my distressed leather tote. It fell with a dense, gratifying thud. My assistant Sarah hovered in the doorway. She was pale, fingers shredding a tissue to ribbons. Emily, she whispered, as if a louder tone might summon the creature pacing the hallway. Is it true? Did she, actually? It's true, Sarah, I murmured. I picked up the files, the early due diligence for the Sterling merger. I weighed them for a moment, considering these were company materials. Technically, they stayed here. I placed them neatly in the center of the desk, but the merger, Sarah stuttered. The meeting is in 2 days. No one else knows the leverage ratios. No one else understands the appendix clauses. I'm sure Cassidy is extremely capable, I said. And the lie tasted delicious, like poison disguised as honey. She has an MBA, Sarah. She reads the handbook. I cleared my browser history, logged out of the encrypted server, scrubbed the local cache. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I was simply removing my personal fingerprints. If they wanted to navigate this labyrinth, they'd need to rely on the files they possessed, not the shortcuts stored in my memory. I put on my coat, cashmere, warm and soft against the sudden chill rolling from the vents. I lifted my tote. When I stepped out, the entire floor pretended to work. Heads bowed, but eyes flicking upward. The silence was suffocating. It was the quiet of sailors watching the captain tossed overboard by a mutineer who couldn't even read the compass. Cassidy waited by the elevators, arms crossed, foot tapping, flanked by 2 uneasy security guards who'd known me for years. Make sure she didn't take any proprietary material, Cassidy barked. Bob, head of floor security, gave me an apologetic glance. He'd seen me working late for a decade, seen me feed his team on holidays. She's clean, Miss Cassidy, he murmured, not even looking in my bag. Cassidy huffed.
Fine.
Just get her out. I want this toxicity off my floor. I stopped before the elevator and pressed the button. I waited for the
Ding.
When the doors opened, I turned toward Cassidy. She braced for cursing, threats, a triumphant, "You'll regret this." Instead, I smiled. A genuine smile. The kind you give someone who's unknowingly handed you a winning lottery ticket, while thinking it's a parking citation. "Thank you, Cassidy," I said. Her frown deepened. The confusion splintered. Her mask of arrogance for a heartbeat.
What?
"For clarifying this organization's priorities," I said. "It's been illuminating. Good luck with the merger. The appendices are tricky." I stepped into the elevator. "What appendices?" she demanded, lunging forward as the doors slid shut. "The file is complete." I checked the digital drive. "Digital drives are so impersonal," I murmured. The doors closed, cutting off her face just as panic began blooming in her eyes.
As
The elevator descended, gravity tugged at my stomach, but my spirit lifted. I glanced at my watch. 10:15 a.m. By noon, legal would start asking questions. By 2, the partners would be bewildered. By morning, the bleeding would begin. I stepped out of the building and into the bright, blinding brilliance of the city that I didn't flag a cab. I walked 2 blocks to a quiet cafe. I ordered a double espresso and settled by the window. I pulled my phone from my bag and powered it off, letting the silence stretch for a while. I spent the afternoon wandering an art gallery.
I
Studied abstract expressionist pieces, chaos framed and contained, and felt an unexpected sense of kinship.
It
Was astonishing how much of the world you miss when you're busy carrying the load of a billion-dollar corporation on your back. For the first time in years, I noticed texture, pigment, brushwork, stillness. It wasn't until 6 p.m., when I was home in my apartment pouring a glass of Nebbiolo, that I decided to turn my phone on again. The device buzzed in my hand like an enraged hornet. It vibrated nonstop for a full 2 minutes. The screen exploded with a wave of alerts, a digital landslide of desperation. 14 missed calls from the office.
Sarah.
3 calls from the HR director. 5 calls from an unknown number. 27 new emails. I sipped my wine, letting the tannin settle, and thumbed through the messages. Sarah, 11:30 a.m. Emily, legal just came down. They're asking who approved your termination. Cassidy is barricaded in her office. Sarah, 12:45 p.m. The partners from the Tokyo firm tried reaching you. Cassidy answered the call. It went badly. She told them you weren't a cultural fit. There was a lot of shouting. In Japanese. Sarah, 2:30 p.m. Where are the appendix files? Cassidy is losing.
It
She says you erased them. IT says they never existed on the server. Emily, everyone is melting down. I smiled, swirling my wine. Naturally, they weren't on the server. The appendix files weren't documents at all. They were subtleties. They were the handshake terms about retaining critical staff in the acquired company. They were the spoken assurances I'd given Marcus Sterling about protecting his family's legacy branding. They lived in my handwritten notes. Notes that were currently resting in my fireplace, dissolving into smoke. I opened an email from the General Counsel. Ethan Thorne, good man, but gelatin when facing the board. Subject: urgent. Employment status/misunderstanding. Emily, there appears to have been a major miscommunication regarding protocol application. Please contact me as soon as possible. We need to address reinstating your contract before the Sterling meeting. This can be resolved. Cassidy is inexperienced and perhaps overly strict. Let's not allow emotions to jeopardize the merger. Emotions. I murmured to the empty room. They always called it emotions when a woman reacted, but strategy when a man did. I didn't respond. I could imagine the office perfectly. The sun sinking, throwing long accusatory shadows across the open plan floor. Cassidy sagging, her jasmine perfume souring, her pristine white suit rumpled. She'd be realizing that vice president's daughter was a title that commanded obedience, but not respect. Certainly not competence.
She had the spreadsheets.
She had the figures. She could see the valuation at $3 billion. But she
Didn't grasp why.
She didn't understand that Clause 3 in Section 5, the one about environmental liabilities, was actually a coded negotiation about a certain piece of land in Montana that Marcus Sterling's grandfather had
Purchased.
On paper, it looked like a liability, but it was the emotional backbone of the deal.
She
Would try to renegotiate it to trim costs, exactly what any MBA textbook would advise. And in doing so, she'd insult Marcus deeply enough that he'd walk out before the coffee hit the table. I sat on my sofa and draped a blanket over my legs. The city lights flickered. Beyond my window, indifferent to the chaos unraveling in the glass tower downtown, another text arrived. This one came from a number I didn't recognize, but the area code told me it belonged to the private line of the Sterling Hart CFO. CFO, 7:15 p.m. Emily, answer your
phone.
Name your price. I stared at the message. Name your price. My price wasn't financial.
My
Price was dignity. And unfortunately for them, dignity was a currency. They had just collapsed to zero. I placed the phone face down on the coffee table. I wasn't going to rescue them. Not tonight. Tonight, I planned to watch a movie. Maybe something catastrophic. Maybe something about a woman walking into the sunset while the palace burns behind her. The panic was faint from here, but I knew by morning it would be deafening. There is a particular drawer in my home office that stays locked. It doesn't hold jewelry or money. It holds leverage. I walked to the antique writing desk in the corner of my living room and pulled a small brass key from beneath a decorative succulent. The lock released with a deeply satisfying mechanical click. Inside, resting against a velvet lining, was a single leather-bound folder. It was worn, the corners softened and frayed, carrying the scent of aged paper and smoke. Embossed on the cover in faded gold leaf were the words, NDA, Legacy Protocol, Sterling Family Trust. Most people assumed I was brought into Sterling Hart because of my credentials. The truth was I came with the terms. 5 years ago, when Marcus Sterling first considered allowing external capital into his family empire, he had one condition. He wanted a liaison who understood old wealth, not the loud, neon wealth of tech kings, but the quiet, shielded wealth that moves across generations, not fiscal quarters. My father had been Marcus's father's attorney. I had grown up playing hide-and-seek in the Sterling Estate Library while the men smoked cigars and discussed trusts. I wasn't simply staff. I was the bridge. I was the interpreter between the ruthless, modern capitalism of my firm and the hereditary loyalty of the Sterling bloodline. I opened the folder. Inside lay a single slip of paper with a direct private number. Not a business line, the number to the phone Marcus carried in his breast pocket. I sat for a long moment tracing the digits. Dialing this number was the nuclear option. It broke every confidentiality clause in my employment contract. It was career suicide. But then I recalled Cassidy's
face.
I remembered the way she stared at my blazer, like it was contamination. I remembered the smug glow she wore firing me in front of people I had trained. I lifted my phone. I entered the number. It rang twice. This is Marcus. The voice was deep, gravelly, unmistakable. It's Emily, I said. There was a pause, a shift like pressure in the airwaves. I thought we were in a quiet period until the signing on Friday. We were, I said evenly. But the conditions have changed. Changed how? The warmth vanished from his tone, replaced with the steel of a man who owned ocean fleets. I've been terminated, I said. The silence on the line was complete. It stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Terminated, he repeated, as though testing a foreign word. By whom? The board? Did the SEC Uncover something?
No, Ian Sweat.
By the new vice president's chief of staff. A dress code violation and a cultural misalignment. A dress code violation, Marcus said, voice flat. Yes. And who is managing the transition on the Montana assets? No one, I replied. Cassidy, the new chief of staff, believes the server files are adequate. I heard a sound that could have been a laugh or could have been a growl. Files on the server list the Montana land as non-revenue acreage. Without your addendum, the system will flag it for liquidation within 6 months. Correct, I said. So they fired the only person who knows where the skeletons are kept and did it 2 days before the largest merger in their history. That seems to be the situation. Emily, Marcus said, his voice dropping into a low, confidential murmur. Are you free for breakfast tomorrow? Unemployed, Marcus. I'm free the entire day.
Good. Meet me at the Pierre.
8 o'clock.
A.M.
And Emily? Yes. Don't sign anything with them.
No severance.
No extended NDA. Nothing. Wouldn't cross my mind. I ended the call. My pulse was thundering. A slow, solid drum striking inside my ribs. I had crossed the Rubicon. I wasn't merely a dismissed employee now. I was an active combatant. I shut the leather folder and locked the drawer. The apartment felt altered. It wasn't a sanctuary anymore. It was a command center. The Pierre Hotel serves breakfast with a sort of quiet precision that makes you feel like you're orchestrating a coup, which, in a sense, we were. Marcus Sterling appeared as he always did, immaculate in a navy suit, silver hair neatly brushed back, eyes that had witnessed everything and been impressed by none of it. We didn't chat about weather. We didn't talk about food. They called my team this morning, Marcus said, spreading butter on toast. With surgical control. Oh. I lifted my tea.
Yes.
A woman named Cassidy. She sounded winded. Marcus paused, amusement flickering in his expression. She informed my lead counsel that you were unreachable due to a sudden medical emergency. Claimed you were hospitalized with severe exhaustion, but had fully briefed her on the deal. I set my cup down. The sheer nerve was astonishing. It wasn't merely false. It was a dangerous, provable falsehood. If I were ill, the deal could be delayed legally. If I were terminated, the keyman clause, requiring immediate disclosure of personnel changes, would void the exclusivity terms. She's stalling, I said. She imagines if she gets you in the room, she can sweet-talk her way past the Montana provisions. She thinks I'm a fool, Marcus corrected. She thinks I'm a walking checkbook. He dabbed his mouth with a linen napkin. My assistant, James, did some digging. Apparently HR is locked in a turf war with this Cassidy. The board didn't learn of your firing. Until this morning. The CFO is reportedly hurling staplers. That sounds like him, I said. Here's the reality, Emily. Marcus leaned forward. I don't conduct business with amateurs, and I certainly don't conduct business with liars. The Sterling Heart deal is dead. I'm going to kill it. He let the sentence hang. But I still need to sell, and I still want you leading the transition. He slid a thick document from his briefcase. It wasn't a merger contract. It was a consulting agreement. My holding company needs a director of strategic acquisitions. Compensation is double what you made. Equity is substantial. And your first job is to find a new buyer for my company. I studied the contract. It was liberation. It was leverage. It was the most satisfying vengeance imaginable. There's only one thing, Marcus added, a sharp grin cutting across his face. I haven't been to your old office yet. It's set for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Why wait? Because I want to watch her face when she tries to explain why the supposedly hospitalized liaison is sitting across the table. A cold ripple of anticipation ran through me. Want me at the meeting? No, Marcus shook his head. I want you in the lobby. I want you to be the final thing she sees before her career disintegrates. I'll handle the meeting. You handle the exit. My phone buzzed again on the table. It was an automated notice from the Sterling Heart server. My access had been officially revoked. Then a second alert. A news headline. Early rumors swirl. Sterling Heart merger facing procedural delays as key executive rumored to depart. The leak had burst. The predators were
closing in.
I accept, I told Marcus, lifting the pen. Good, he said. Now finish your eggs. You'll need your strength. Watching an empire collapse is draining work. Later that afternoon, I walked past the Sterling
Heart building.
I stayed across the street, hidden behind oversized sunglasses. I could see the commotion on the 42nd floor through the clear walls.
People pacing. Lights
burning. It looked like an ant colony after someone kicked its mound. I checked my personal phone. One last desperate message from Cassidy waited. Emily, please call me. We can fix this. I didn't mean it. It was stress. My father is asking questions. Please. I erased it. There are no do-overs at the top. Cassidy, you read the handbook. Should have understood the room. The morning of the meeting, the sky was a bruised violet, hinting at rain. It matched the atmosphere I imagined choking the executive suite across the street. I sat tucked in a corner booth at the Grind, a cafe directly across from the main entrance of the Sterling Heart Tower. It was 8:30 a.m. The meeting began. At 9 o'clock, I wasn't alone. James, Marcus's assistant, the kind of man who looked chiseled out of stone and tailored by Tom Ford, sat opposite me. We had a stack of papers on the table. They were the onboarding forms for my new post at Sterling Holdings. Marcus is en route, James said, checking
his watch.
He's 5 minutes out. He asked me to make sure you're visible. Visible, I echoed, to the tower. James motioned subtly toward the skyscraper across the street. I glanced up. Floor-to-ceiling windows in the lobby were unobstructed. And there, pacing near the security desk, stood a woman in white.
Cassidy.
She looked unhinged. She was shouting at the receptionist, waving frantically at the elevators. She was trying to make everything flawless for Marcus's arrival. She wanted to appear indispensable. Then she froze. She looked toward the street. At first, she scanned aimlessly. Then her eyes locked onto the coffee shop. It was roughly 50 yards, but I saw her go still. She saw me. And more importantly, she recognized James. Everyone recognized James. He was Marcus Sterling's omen, and he was sitting beside me, chatting easily, handing me a pen. I watched Cassidy press her palms to the glass. Her mouth fell open. She snatched her phone, dialing furiously. My phone stayed silent. I had blocked her an hour earlier. She sees us, I said, sipping my cappuccino. Perfect, James murmured without looking back. Let her panic. Fear makes people careless, and Marcus despises careless. I watched her unravel. She spun to the receptionist, pointing at us, probably screaming about spies or sabotage. The receptionist only shook her head, terrified. Cassidy whirled away, sprinting to the elevators, heading for the 42nd floor to warn. Well, warn who? Her father? The board? What could she even say? The woman I fired for wearing the wrong buttons is drinking coffee with the buyer's top lieutenant. It was a confession of total failure. She's running upstairs, I reported. James nodded. She'll try to seize the
story.
Too late. The story walked out yesterday with your cardboard box. James collected the documents. You're officially signed. Emily, welcome to the family. Now, per Marcus's orders, wait here for exactly 20 minutes. Then cross the street and step into the lobby. Just stand
there.
Be the ghost at the banquet. And Marcus? He's arriving now. I looked outside. A sleek black town car pulled up to the curb before the tower. The driver opened the door, and Marcus Sterling stepped out. He fastened his jacket, adjusted his cufflinks, and stared at the building with the look of a demolition expert, studying a doomed structure. He didn't glance toward the cafe. He walked directly into the lion's den. "Showtime," James whispered. I watched Marcus slip through the revolving doors. I knew exactly what waited inside. Cassidy would be racing down from the 42nd floor, breathless, shiny with sweat, scrambling to pull herself together. She'd greet him with a lie, and he'd greet her with the truth. I waited. 1 minute. 5 minutes.
10. Then
Began to fall, smearing the glass, turning the city into a watercolor of steel and gray. But I saw everything clearly. I paid for the coffee. I checked my reflection in the glass. My blazer sat flawlessly. My worn tote rested on my shoulder. Time to go say hello. The Sterling Hart lobby had been built to intimidate. 3 stories of marble. A waterfall that cost more than my entire college tuition, and acoustics designed to magnify every footstep. I stepped through the revolving doors, and the soft roar of the water swept over me. The air was chilled. The scene unfolded like a staged portrait. Marcus Sterling stood in the middle of the atrium near the security gates. He wasn't approaching the elevators. He was planted there, still as sculpture. Cassidy was beside him. She must have flown down the service stairs because her usually pristine white suit looked more panic than power. The CFO and general counsel flanked her, both wearing expressions that said they wished they were anywhere else. I crossed the marble floor quietly. My heels clicked, a steady, measured rhythm slicing through the waterfall's hum. I stopped about 20 feet away, close enough to hear, far enough to observe. "Unforeseen complications," Cassidy was saying, her voice shrill, bouncing off the marble. "But as I said, Emily is unavailable. She's hospitalized. I didn't want to burden you with the details." Marcus looked at her. He didn't blink. "Hospitalized," he repeated. His tone wasn't loud, yet it echoed. "Yes," Cassidy insisted quickly. "Very sudden, but she briefed me thoroughly. I'm fully prepared to move forward with the signing." Marcus slipped a hand into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen. "That's odd," he said, "because I just received a message from her. She says the coffee across the street was excellent." Cassidy froze. The color drained from her face so fast she resembled melting wax. The CFO's head snapped up. "What?" he croaked. Marcus shifted slightly, scanning the lobby. His eyes found me. He didn't smile. He simply nodded. Cassidy turned. She saw me standing there, steady, composed, tote bag in hand. The supposedly bedridden invalid. The silence that followed was heavy enough to flatten steel. She. Cassidy sputtered, jabbing a trembling finger in my direction. "She's lying. She must be." I fired her. The truth burst from her mouth before she could choke it back. The CFO spun toward her, eyes bulging. "You did what?" Marcus looked at her again, and the expression on his face was pure, unfiltered contempt. "You told my legal team she was ill. You lied to me, to my counsel, and to your own executives, and you dismissed the project lead 48 hours before closing because..." He looked me over slowly. "Because of what, exactly?" "She broke dress code," Cassidy shrieked, frantic and trapped. "Her buttons, her bag, it's in the handbook." Marcus laughed. The sound was dry and razor-sharp. "You fired the architect of a $3 billion deal. Because of buttons." He turned to the CFO. "Is this the leadership I'm supposed to acquire? Is this the judgment I'm expected to pour money into?" "Mr. Sterling, please," the CFO pleaded, stepping forward with raised hands. "This is a simple miscommunication. Cassidy is inexperienced. We can bring Emily back. We'll reinstate her immediately, with incentive." Marcus lifted a hand to silence him. "No," then he looked at me. "Emily, are you currently employed by this firm?" I stepped closer. "No, Mr. Sterling. My employment was terminated for cause as of Tuesday morning. Then you have no authority to negotiate." "None at all." Marcus turned back to the group, eyes locking on Cassidy, who now trembled, tears welling. "Then there's no one here I trust to sign this document," he said, signaling James by the door. "Meeting's off. You cannot proceed." Cassidy screamed. "My father will sue. We have a term sheet." "Term sheets are contingent on diligence and good faith," Marcus replied. "I see. You've shown neither." He pivoted on his heel. "Good day." As the revolving doors spun closed behind Marcus, the lobby erupted. Not an actual explosion, but a psychological shockwave that knocked the room sideways. The CFO, Henderson, a man who survived 3 hostile takeovers and a federal audit, spun on Cassidy, his face plum-colored. "You fired her?" Henderson thundered. The acoustics amplified every word. "You dismissed the liaison without consulting legal, without consulting the board." She was insubordinate. Cassidy shrank against the security desk, sobbing. "I am the VP's chief of staff. You are a liability." Henderson spat. "Do you even realize what you just did? $3 billion just walked out the door. That was our stock, my pension." Security guards stared at the floor. Receptionists mimed typing on dead keyboards. I stood calmly, observing the chaos. Cassidy's eyes frantically searched for support. They landed on me. Hatred laced with dawning horror, she realized she'd dug her own grave. "This is your fault," she screeched. "You set me up." "I planned to wear a blazer," I said evenly, slicing through her hysteria. "You planned arrest, Cassidy." Henderson whirled. "Emily, ignore her. She's suspended, effective immediately." He glared at Cassidy. "Go to your father's office. Wait there."
Don't speak.
Text? Tweet? "I will personally sue for breach of fiduciary duty." Cassidy emitted a jagged sob and sprinted to the elevators, heels clattering frantically. Henderson drew a deep breath and plastered on a desperate smile. "Emily, the damage is bad, but not irreversible. We can call Marcus. Tell him it's fixed. You're retired. Senior VP, 20% raise, stock options. Just pick up the phone, fix this." I studied Henderson. 10 years of service. He'd never asked about my family, never thanked me for saving a quarter's earnings. Now only because the ship was sinking. "I can't," I said. "Why not?" he pressed. "Name your number. We'll double it." "It's not about money," I said, reaching into my distressed tote. I pulled out a sleek cream envelope. "What's that?" Henderson asked. "My resignation." I lied. It wasn't. It was my Sterling Holdings onboarding packet. "You can't rehire me." "Why?" "Because I've already accepted a new role." Henderson's jaw slackened.
Who?
"The client," I said. Realization struck him like a blow. He staggered back. "You're working for Sterling as of this morning?"
Yes.
"I'm the director of strategic acquisitions. Bob, if you want to salvage any of this, you'll be negotiating with me." I checked my watch. But not today. Today I was buying a new blazer. This one held bad memories. I turned toward the exit. Behind me, Henderson shouted into his phone, "CEO, lawyers, God." But no one answered. The line was dead. 3 days later, Sterling Heart stock plunged 18%. Rumors of internal mismanagement and leadership failures swirled. The board begged Marcus for one last meeting. They swore obstacles were removed, that the deal could be restructured. Marcus agreed, with one condition. The full executive team, including the VP and his daughter, had to apologize. The boardroom was packed. Air conditioning ran full, yet everyone sweated. Cassidy sat at the far end, looking small, her white suit replaced by a dull gray dress. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. The doors opened. Marcus entered, followed by James, then me. I walked in last, clad in a new black suit, sharp, gold buttons gleaming. A collective gasp filled the room. Cassidy's head snapped up, eyes wide. "We assumed," the CEO began, voice shaking, "this meeting would discuss reinstating the merger." Marcus sat at the head.
No briefcase.
Hands folded. I'm not here to merge, he said. I'm here to offer 30 cents on the dollar for your assets. 30 cents. The CFO shouted. That's theft. We were at 3 billion. That was when competent leadership existed, Marcus said calmly. That was when Emily existed.
He gestured to me.
Emily now advises me on your portfolio's true value. Without the Montana transition, environmental risk is catastrophic. Tokyo partners have lost faith. The company is hollow. Eyes turned to me. Betrayal carved deep into their faces. How could you? 15. Ears, I didn't check my reflection. I knew my buttons were perfect. Down we went, leaving the 42nd floor wreckage behind, and I finally exhaled. You're the real stars of the corporate jungle. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe, or I'll flick the switch on your old cubicle memories.